What if Rhaegar Targaryen had won at the Battle of the Trident? Let's explore the depths of it in this video. This single twist of fate would rewrite the history of the Seven Kingdoms, as the Crown Prince's victory unleashes far-reaching consequences that shape a darker, more turbulent realm under Targaryen rule. On the banks of the Trident, Prince Rhaegar stands victorious over the fallen Robert Baratheon, and the fate of Westeros hangs in the balance.
Rhaegar, you took her from me. You died for it!
I took nothing from you. But if you want her, Baratheon, you'll have to go through me.
Is that what you told her father? And brother too?
The rebel cause collapses with its champion dead, and a new Targaryen era is about to be forged in blood and shadow. The seeds of Robert's rebellion were sown at the tourney at Harrenhal, where all the smiles died. In the year of the fall spring, Rhaegar Targaryen rode past his own wife, Princess Elia Martell, and crowned Lyanna Stark as the Queen of Love and Beauty in front of thousands. It was a shocking, scandalous gesture, one that planted the first doubts and grievances in the minds of lords. For Rhaegar and Lyanna, it was the declaration of a love, or a destiny, that would soon engulf the realm in war. Not long after, Lyanna Stark vanished from Winterfell, and whispers spread that Rhaegar had abducted her. Whether Lyanna went willingly or not hardly mattered to her outraged family. To the Starks, it was an unforgivable crime that demanded justice. When Lyanna's brother Brandon Stark rode to King's Landing demanding Rhaegar's head, he met a cruel fate. The Mad King, Aerys Targaryen, arrested Brandon and lured their father, Lord Rickard Stark, to court. In a spectacle of fire and blood, Aerys executed them both.
My son returns. My brave, victorious Rhaegar. You've crushed the rebellion at last.
Lord Rickard burned alive in his own armor, Brandon strangled by a noose while reaching for his dying father. The heinous murders of Stark patriarch and heir set the north aflame with vengeance. Lord Eddard Ned Stark, the new young Lord of Winterfell, and Robert Baratheon, Lyanna's betrothed and the fiery Lord of Storm's End, were in the Vale when they heard the horror. Aerys demanded their heads as well, but Lord Jon Arryn of the Eyrie refused that order, and instead raised his banners in revolt. The great houses of Baratheon, Stark, and Arryn formed an alliance of rebellion, bound by outrage and the blood they'd lost. What had begun as a personal vendetta, a kidnapped northern girl, and a prince's folly exploded into a full-blown civil war against the Targaryen dynasty. For nearly a year, battles raged across the realms. Robert Baratheon, a formidable warrior with the battle cry of vengeance on his lips, won early victories, but also suffered setbacks. He smashed the Royalists at Summerhall and Battle of the Bells, though Prince Rhaegar was notably absent from those fights. Rhaegar had been in the south, preparing and gathering his forces, perhaps searching for some answer in ancient prophecy as well. Many believed Rhaegar was driven not only by love, but by a prophecy of the prince that was promised a savior born of dragons and winter's rose. In his mind, the child he expected with Lyanna Stark might have been the key to saving the world. But to pursue this prophecy, Rhaegar had risked the peace of the realm and now faced the consequences on the battlefield. By the late stages of the war, the rebels had rallied much of the north, the Vale, and the Riverlands to their cause, while loyalists of the Crownlands and Reach remained with the Targaryens. The Reach, led by the prosperous House Tyrell, stayed loyal and besieged Robert's brother Stannis at Storm's End. Dorne stayed quiet but tense, outraged by Lyanna's supposed abduction, and fearful for their beloved Princess Elia, Rhaegar's wife, who waited anxiously in King's Landing with their two young children. Meanwhile, Lord Tywin Lannister of Casterly Rock watched from the sidelines, sitting out most of the war, biding his time to see who would prevail. The Mad King's paranoia had driven Tywin away years before, but the Lion of the West was poised, host at the ready, to either save or sack the capital at a moment's notice. All paths converged at the Trident, the great river crossing of the King's Road. There, the decisive battle would be fought between Rhaegar and Robert Dragon Prince and Rebel Lord, both born under the looming shadow of destiny. In our timeline, Robert Baratheon won that fight in single combat, shattering Rhaegar's armor and with it the Targaryen dynasty. But in this alternate timeline, the outcome is dramatically reversed. History turns on a few strokes of a sword, and the realm's future changes forever. The Battle of the Trident unfolds amidst the roar of rushing water and the clangor of steel. At the ford of the river, banners whip in the cold wind, the crowned stag of Baratheon facing the three-headed dragon of Targaryen. The sky is iron gray, and the water of the Trident runs chill and swift, foaming around the legs of men and horses as they crash together in deadly melee. Rebels and loyalists collide in waves, Northmen and Stormlanders, yelling Robert's name, smash against ranks of golden-armored Crownland knights and reachmen, fighting desperately for Prince Rhaegar and their king. At the center of the fray, Robert Baratheon on his massive warhorse spots his target, Rhaegar Targaryen, gleaming in black armor inlaid with rubies. The two commanders drive toward each other through the chaos, as if guided by fate. Robert is a towering figure wielding his massive warhammer, its head already red with the blood of men he's slain this day. Rhaegar is leaner, mounted on a white stallion, armed with a longsword, and armored in plate that shines like the dawn. His ornate breastplate bears the three-headed dragon sigil, and is studded with red rubies that catch the light. Soldiers scramble out of their way, or are trampled under hooves, as the two warriors finally meet in the shallows of the ford, where the river runs red. With a thunderous crash, Robert swings his great hammer, and Rhaegar meets it with his sword. The force of the blow sends a shockwave of steel and sparks spraying through the air. Rhaegar's horse rears, but the prince controls it deftly, circling to avoid a second swing. For a few intense heartbeats, it is as if the battle pauses around them, all eyes drawn to this duel that will decide the war. Prince Rhaegar and Lord Robert glare at one another through the slits of their helms, each man's face drenched with sweat and determination. Robert strikes first, letting out a bellow of rage that echoes over the water. He swings his hammer in a brutal arc, aimed at Rhaegar's chest, intending to crush the life out of the Targaryen prince, just as he did to many royalist knights earlier in the day. Rhaegar urges his stallion sideways at the last instant. The warhammer whooshes past his armor by inches, crashing instead into the river shallows with a spray of water and mud. Seizing the opening, Rhaegar delivers a swift counterattack. He slashes his longsword at Robert's unprotected side. The Valyrian steel-forged blade bites into Robert's mail and draws first blood. Robert Baratheon grunts in pain and fury as crimson stains his heavy surcoat bearing the stag emblem. Robert responds with astonishing ferocity. Despite the blood now seeping from his side, the big man swings again, raining down hammer blows that crash against Rhaegar's defenses. Rhaegar parries one strike with his sword, the force jolting his arm, and ducks another that whistles past his helm. The prince's armor, glittering with rubies, rings with each glancing hit. One ruby cracks loose, tumbling into the river, an ominous echo of a fate in another world. But Rhaegar refuses to fall here. His violet eyes burn with purpose behind his visor. He is fighting for more than his life, for the crown, for his family, and for the prophetic vision that drove him to this battlefield. All around them, men fight and die, but the duel at the ford becomes the heart of the battle. Ned Stark hacks his way through the press of bodies a short distance away, desperately trying to reach his friend Robert's side. The Lord of Winterfell is a grim figure, sword in hand, and Grey Stark direwolf emblazoned on his shield, but too many combatants surge between him and the duel. Ned can only watch with a pounding heart as Robert and Rhaegar trade blows that could each be mortal. Farther off, Barristan Selmy, the legendary Kingsguard knight, is cutting down rebels with peerless skill while shouting encouragement to his prince. Not far from Barristan, Sir Lewin Martell of the Kingsguard Elias' uncle has been unhorsed and is fighting on foot. He duels a knight with a moon and falcon sigil, one of Jon Arryn's men. Lewin moves with a viper's quickness, but a northern axeman takes him by surprise. Sir Lewin falls to the mud, his white cloak soaking in blood and river water. The battle's toll is terrible, but none feel it more keenly than Rhaegar and Robert as they struggle in the water and blood mist of the ford. Robert Baratheon's face twists into a snarl beneath his antlered helm. He remembers every horror that led him here: Lyanna stolen, his friends murdered by the Mad King, the toll of battles won and lost. With a roar, he raises his warhammer high, both hands white-knuckled on the haft, and brings it crashing down at Rhaegar once more. This time, Rhaegar cannot completely dodge. The hammer glances off the side of his breastplate with a grinding screech of metal, tearing 3 rubies from the dragon-decorated armor and knocking Rhaegar from the saddle. The prince hits the shallows with a splash, rubies scattering in the water around him like drops of blood. A cheer goes up from the rebel lines. They have seen this sight before, in visions of victory, but Rhaegar Targaryen rises again. Gasping for breath, he finds his footing in the swirling knee-high water. The blow that knocked him down would have shattered lesser armor, but his plate held. The pain is sharp, yet he stands. Through the dented helm, Rhaegar's eyes meet Robert's. The rebel lord heaves for breath, raising his hammer for the killing strike that he believes will end the war. For Lyanna, for the throne. Everything Robert has fought for concentrates into one last swing. As Robert lunges forward, Rhaegar moves with sudden swiftness, honed by years of disciplined training and perhaps guided by desperation. He sidesteps into the blow's path, but not as its victim instead. He deflects the hammer with the edge of his sword, a maneuver requiring perfect timing. The hammer's head crashes into the water, sending up a geyser as Robert loses his balance for just a heartbeat. In that fleeting opening, Rhaegar drives forward. With both hands on his longsword's hilt, he thrusts the blade straight through Robert Baratheon's armor, aiming just below the ribcage, where the plated steel meets mail. There is a sickening crunch of metal, and a wet thunk, as the sword pierces Robert's heavy breastplate. One moment, Robert's eyes burn with fury. The next, they widen in shock and pain. Prince Rhaegar's blade runs Robert through. The mighty Lord of Storm's End staggers, his warhammer slipping from his fingers into the river with a splash. Time seems to freeze. The rebel shouting falters as men witness the unthinkable. Robert Baratheon impaled on Rhaegar's sword, the strength going out of his massive frame. Rhaegar pulls the blade free, and Robert collapses to his knees in the bloody water. The river currents swirl red around him. Robert's warhammer lies submerged and forgotten as the rebel leader clutches at the mortal wound in his torso. He looks up at Rhaegar, chest heaving, trying to speak. Perhaps he means to curse Rhaegar one final time, or to whisper Lyanna's name, but no words come. The life fades from Robert's blue eyes. With a last gurgling breath, Robert Baratheon falls face first into the Trident, the weight of his armor causing his body to sink slowly beneath the crimson-streaked water. The rebel who would be king is dead. Silence and disbelief ripples out from the ford. Rhaegar Targaryen stands over his fallen foe, chest heaving, sword dripping with Robert's blood. A ruby falls from his cracked breastplate into the river with a soft plink. In that instant, a strange calm comes over the prince, a mix of relief, sorrow, and grim resolve. He has done it. The usurper is slain. The prophecy that haunted Rhaegar's dreams remains alive, but at what cost? There is no time to reflect. All around, the battle still rages, though many rebels who saw Robert's fall are stricken with shock. Prince Rhaegar raises his sword high, the rubies on his armor glinting even in their cracked state. Robert Baratheon is dead, he cries out in a ringing voice across the water. Yield, in the name of the king! His commanding call carries over the clangor, reaching friend and foe alike. The royalist troops, momentarily stunned by the duel's ferocity, now rally with elation. A great cheer erupts from the loyalist lines, a sound of triumph surging through the rainy gray morning. The dragon has slain the stag. On the rebel side, chaos and despair spread like wildfire. Many of Robert's bannermen lose heart at the sight of their beloved leader's demise. Some throw down their weapons, shock plain on their faces, and attempt to flee or surrender. Others, furious and grief-mad, fight even more fiercely in a hopeless frenzy. Lord Ned Stark is among those still battling on instinct, his face a mask of anguish. He slashes through 2 gold cloaks and rushes knee-deep into the ford, where Robert fell. There is no sign of his friend beneath the bloody current, only Robert's antlered helmet bobbing in the water. The man himself sunk and lost. Ned lets out a guttural cry, equal parts rage and sorrow. For one terrible heartbeat, he contemplates charging at Rhaegar to avenge everyone he's lost. The prince stands mere yards away, catching his breath, blood dripping down the dragons on his armor. This is the man, Ned thinks, who stole my sister and brought all this doom upon us. His grief screams for him to raise his sword and lunge at Rhaegar, even if it means certain death. But a hand grasps Ned's shoulder firmly. Lord Hoster Tully, Ned's new father-in-law, has waded in after him. The Lord of Riverrun's armor is dented, his banner torn, and his face pale. Ned, it's over, Hoster shouts hoarsely over the din. On the far banks, the rebel lines are breaking. Many are kneeling or casting aside swords as Targaryen banners advance. Across the way, Jon Arryn's troops from the Vale are in disarray. Some have yielded, others pull back in orderly retreat under Lord Arryn's command, trying to save what lives they can. The rebel host, victorious in so many fights before, is now shattered and leaderless. Eddard Stark's sword arm trembles. He sees Prince Rhaegar watching him through his helm, sword still in hand, but lowered. Rhaegar does not charge at Ned. Instead, he takes a cautious step forward in the water. Around the prince, a ring of Targaryen loyalists form. Crownland knights with dragon-crested helms, and Barristan Selmy at his side, all ready to defend Rhaegar. Dozens of bows are being notched, aimed loosely toward any rebel lords who have yet to surrender. They all know Ned Stark by sigil and stance. He is now the highest-ranking rebel left on the field. Heart hammering, Ned slowly raises his sword, and then lets it slip from his fingers. The Valyrian steel blade Ice drops into the river with a splash, swallowed by the flowing red waters at Ned's feet. A clang of shields and swords being set down ripples out as other rebels follow suit. The Lord of Winterfell falls to one knee in the chilly shallows, drenched and drained. "We yield," Ned Stark calls out, voice cracking with grief but carrying clear. The North yields. The Trident is lost. All around, the survivors of the rebel army heed his words. Those still holding weapons cast them aside grudgingly. The tumult of battle fades into an eerie stillness, broken only by the groans of the wounded and the splashes of a few riderless horses thrashing in the river. The rebel banners the direwolf of Stark, the moon and falcon of Aaron, the tullied trout of Tully now dip in surrender, or lie trampled in mud. In contrast, the dragon banners are raised high, triumphant cries on the loyalist side growing louder as reality sets in. They have won. The rebels are kneeling or scattering, and Robert is dead. Prince Rhaegar steps forward through the water, toward Eddard Stark. Two Kingsguard knights flank the Prince Sir Barristan, and Sir Jonathor Darry wary of treachery even now. But Ned remains on one knee, unarmed, head bowed. His face is splattered with mud and blood, his gray eyes hollow with shock. This young man has lost a father, a brother, and now his closest friend to the Targaryens. Hatred radiates from him even in defeat. Rhaegar regards Ned in silence for a moment. So much death between our houses, he thinks somberly. The Dragon Prince's victory tastes of ashes as he looks at Ned Stark's despair. War was never Rhaegar's wish, yet he knows his own actions lit its spark. Ned finally raises his gaze to meet Rhaegar's. Amidst the rain and river mist, the two men lock eyes. The new king in the north, brought low, and the soon-to-be king of Westeros, rising high. No words pass between them, not yet. With a curt nod, Rhaegar accepts the surrender. He motions to his guards. Within moments, gold-cloaked soldiers carefully pull Ned Stark up from the ground and take him into custody, firm hands on his arms. Other rebel lords, Lord Hoster Tully, wounded but alive, and Lord Jon Arryn, grim-faced and reluctant, are also gathered and secured as prisoners under flag of parley. Lord Arryn had managed to withdraw a portion of his forces in good order, but now he halts to protect his surviving men from slaughter, agreeing to lay down arms. The Trident belongs to the Targaryens. Rhaegar allows himself a long, shaky exhale. The weight of his actions sinks in. Robert Baratheon's corpse floats somewhere beneath the water at his feet, and with it sink the hopes of rebellion. The Battle of the Trident is won. Rhaegar Targaryen has triumphed. Though exhausted and bruised beneath his dented armor, Rhaegar squares his shoulders. A sense of profound, sorrowful relief washes over him. He thinks of Elia and their children in King's Landing, of his mother and father waiting for news, of Lyanna far away guarded in the south, all the fragmented pieces of his life that now hinge on what he does next. There is no time to delay. He must press on to seize the final victory and secure the Iron Throne that is his birthright. As the loyalist host regroups, Rhaegar snaps out orders. The wounded on both sides are to be tended. Rhaegar pointedly commands his maesters and septons to aid any injured man, rebel or royalist, since mercy now will pay dividends in peace. He knows the realm will need healing, in body and spirit. Archers are dispatched to collect the scattered rubies from his armor that fell in the ford, a strange token of this battle. And most urgently, ravens are sent flapping towards King's Landing with the news: victory at the Trident, Robert Baratheon dead, dragon triumphant. The river runs red with the blood of thousands, but as dusk approaches, the clash of swords is replaced by the wails of wounded men and the solemn tasks of surviving soldiers. Soberingly, the bodies of the fallen are gathered. Loyalist knights haul Robert Baratheon's corpse from the shallows at Rhaegar's behest. Rhaegar quietly insists the fallen rebel lord be treated with respect. Mud-stained and lifeless, Robert's body is laid out on the bank. Even in death, his face is resolute, as though still ready to fight. Rhaegar gazes down at the man who was once his friend at court long ago, and later his bitter enemy. "I'm sorry," the prince whispers under his breath, unheard by anyone, uncertain himself whether it's apology or mere sadness. There is no triumph in Rhaegar's eyes as they cover Robert's body with a crimson cloak. Only determination remains. The battle is won, but the war's final chapter is yet to be written. While ravens race toward the capital bearing word of Rhaegar's victory, King's Landing itself simmers with anxiety. Within the Red Keep, King Aerys paces the throne room like a caged animal. The Mad King's fingernails are long and filthy, and his wild silver-gold hair hangs in tangles to his shoulders. All day he has been in a black mood, cackling one moment and shouting in paranoia the next, consumed by fear of treachery. He knows the decisive battle is being fought, but no word has yet reached him of who prevailed. By his side stands Queen Rhaella, pale and pregnant, trembling each time her husband flies into a rage. Near the Iron Throne, the Kingsguard knight Jaime Lannister keeps his post, watching Aerys warily from behind a white cloak and gilded armor. Only 17, Jaime had been sworn into the Kingsguard scarcely a year ago now. He is forced to protect a king he increasingly suspects is beyond reason. Aerys' remaining loyal counselors hover nearby. Old Grand Maester Pycelle wrings his hands, murmuring sycophantic assurances that all will be well. The king's pyromancer, Lord Rossart, lurks in the shadows of a column, one hand hidden within his robes, likely clutching a flask of wildfire, or a trigger to the caches of the explosive substance hidden under the city. Aerys had given his final orders should the rebels reach the gates. Burn them all. If defeat comes, King's Landing is to turn into a flaming pyre, rather than let Robert Baratheon sit the Iron Throne. The paranoia in Aerys' eyes suggests that even victory might not dissuade him from a final blaze of destruction. His mind is too lost in fear of treachery. Late afternoon sun slants through the high windows when a sentinel bursts into the throne room, dusty and breathless. He kneels, trembling, before the Iron Throne's steps. Aerys all but leaps forward, the bells in his robes jingling. "What news?" the king hisses. "Speak, damn you!" "Your grace," the messenger gasps. "Prince Rhaegar, he has won. The rebels are broken. Robert Baratheon is slain on the Trident." For an instant, the throne room falls silent as the words sink in. Queen Rhaella closes her eyes in relief, lips moving in a prayer of thanks. Maester Pycelle beams, nearly faint with joy. Jaime Lannister breathes out a breath he did not realize he was holding the siege, and slaughter he dreaded may be averted. But King Aerys' reaction is strange and immediate. Rather than joy, a twisted, suspicious scowl contorts his face. His purple eyes narrow to slits. "One?" he echoes, almost incredulous. The Mad King's mind churns. Was this truly good news, or some mummer's trick? He had expected, perhaps even hoped in his madness, for King's Landing to become a glorious funeral pyre with his enemies. Now, his own son has triumphed without Aerys' involvement. Paranoia, never far from Aerys' thoughts, surges within him. How did Rhaegar prevail where so many others failed? Could it be that his defiant son conspired with Tywin Lannister to let the rebellion happen, just to usurp the throne himself? Aerys' mood veers wildly. One moment he gives a manic laugh. "My son has slain the usurper. He's done it. Aegon's line endures." The next, his face darkens, and he mutters, "But will he come for me next? Will they all come for me?" Before anyone can respond, another alarm is raised. A gold-cloaked captain rushes in. "Your Grace, the Lannister host is approaching the city gates." This news strikes the room like a thunderbolt. Lord Tywin Lannister, with a great army of the Westerlands, has finally arrived outside King's Landing. The timing, coming right on the heels of Rhaegar's victory, immediately triggers Aerys' worst suspicions. Tywin had been Aerys' friend and hand for 20 years, until bitterness and mistrust drove them apart. Now, seeing the Lannister lions massed at the gates, Aerys believes his former hand intends to betray him under the guise of assistance. "He's here to loot my city, to steal my throne for himself or that whelp Robert," Aerys screeches. Spittle flies from the king's lips as fear and fury overtake him. Grand Maester Pycelle steps forward, arms spread placatingly. "Your Grace, Lord Tywin was once your loyal servant. He may truly be here to support Prince Rhaegar's triumph." "Silence, you simpering fool," Aerys snaps. His eyes flick to Jaime Lannister, standing stiffly at attention below the Iron Throne. Jaime's face betrays nothing, but Aerys knows exactly who he is. Tywin's eldest son, the lion cub planted in his Kingsguard, a spy and potential assassin. All along, Aerys' mouth twists into a cruel grin. Perhaps he should take this opportunity to rid himself of Tywin's spawn right now. Ser Jaime, the king says, almost cooing. Jaime steps forward, one hand on the hilt of his longsword. Your father has come to pledge loyalty, or so he says. Aerys' voice drips with derision. Go to the gate and bring me Lord Tywin's head if he dares set foot inside my city walls. Jaime blinks, momentarily stunned. Kill his own father? Even for Jaime's checkered moral code, this is an unthinkable order. Around the hall, courtiers pale. Pycelle gives a small gasp of horror. Your Grace, Jaime begins carefully. Perhaps Lord Tywin truly means to support us in this victory. We should at least. Aerys' face contorts with rage at the slight defiance. Traitor! He shrieks at Jaime, spittle flying. I gave you an order. Are you also plotting against me, boy? Like father, like son lions, all traitors and betrayers. The Mad King clutches at his own hair, nails scraping his scalp until fresh beads of blood appear. Queen Rhaella muffles a sob behind her hand. The tension in the throne room is razor sharp. Even Rossart the pyromancer looks alarmed, knowing how quickly Aerys can turn murderous. Outside the Red Keep's walls, great horns sound the arrival of the Lannister army. Tywin Lannister's forces, 20,000 strong with crimson and gold banners, array themselves before the city. To the people on the battlements, it appears the Lannisters have come as friends. Their banners are not flying the Baratheon stag, and word from fleeing ravens suggests that Rhaegar won the battle. Common folk in the streets aren't sure whether to cheer the sight of potential rescuers or cower in fear of a sack. The last light of day glints off thousands of Lannister spears and siege towers, a display of force meant to intimidate any remaining resistance. In the throne room, Aerys' paranoia reaches its zenith. He rounds on Lord Rossart, eyes bulging. They think to steal my glory, to steal my throne, he spits, voice cracking. I'll give them naught but ashes and char. The king moves too quickly for anyone to stop. He seizes Rossart by the arm and hisses a command into his ear. The pyromancer's face goes white, but he nods, withdrawing a flask of wildfire from his robes. At this, Ser Jaime Lannister's blood runs cold. He knows about the caches of wildfire Aerys had hidden throughout King's Landing, thousands of clay pots buried under the Sept of Baelor, beneath the streets, even under the Red Keep itself. Jaime realizes with dawning horror that Aerys means to incinerate the city, even with victory at hand. The king would rather reduce the capital and everyone in it to cinders than risk being deposed, and now, paranoid that Tywin's rescue is actually an attack, Aerys is ready to give the final order. As Rossart turns to carry out the command, Jaime's instincts take over. The young lion's hand closes around the hilt of his sword. This is the moment he's secretly dreaded and anticipated, the moment where he must choose between king and kingdom, oath and honor. Jaime's gaze flickers to Queen Rhaella, who is silently pleading, and then to the towering Mad King mounting the Iron Throne steps to watch the coming doom. The voices of Jaime's own vows echo in his head. Protect the innocent, obey your king, but the king is about to murder 500,000 innocents. Jaime Lannister draws his sword. With a few swift strides, he closes the distance to Lord Rossart. The pyromancer half turns, surprised, the wildfire flask in his hand. Jaime swings. His long sword slices clean through Rossart's torso, spilling both blood and the eerie green liquid of wildfire onto the stone floor. Rossart crumples with a wet shriek, dying before he hits the ground. King Aerys whirls, seeing his last loyalist slain by his own Kingsguard. Traitorous boy! Aerys screams at Jaime. The Mad King backs toward the Iron Throne, fingers splayed, and Jaime knows what he's reaching for, the jagged blades at the throne's side, one of which Aerys had placed there just for this moment. There's a stash of wildfire under the throne too, Jaime recalls in a flash of panic. If Aerys manages to ignite even one cache, the chain reaction could still destroy them all. There's no time for second thoughts or pleas. Jaime lunges. Valyrian steel glitters in the torchlight as his sword takes Aerys in the torso from behind. The Mad King's purple eyes go wide in shock. Jaime drives the blade through with all his strength until the point juts out from Aerys' chest, poking through the front of his robes like one more twisted blade of the Iron Throne. Aerys gasps wetly. He opens his mouth as if to cry out, but only a small gout of blood comes. Jaime steps back and pulls the sword free. The King of the Seven Kingdoms staggers down the steps he had climbed, a red bloom spreading across his silken robes. Incredibly, Aerys does not fall immediately. He catches himself on a protruding sword of the Iron Throne, cutting his hand deeply, and manages one last act of malice. With the blood gushing from his mouth, Aerys rasps out words to Jaime even as life leaves him. "Burn them all," he croaks, each word a crimson bubble on his lips. Then Aerys, too, last of his name to sit the Iron Throne, collapses and dies in a heap of spilled wildfire and blood at the foot of the throne he had defiled with madness. Smoke curls from the wildfire's eerie green puddles on the floor. Jaime Lannister stands over the king's corpse, chest heaving, heart pounding as the reality of what he's done sets in. The throne room is deadly quiet, everyone frozen in shock. Grand Maester Pycelle has his hands over his mouth. Queen Rhaella trembles, tears on her cheeks, as relief and horror war within her. Her abusive husband is dead, slain by their protector. Servants and guards peek in from the hall, drawn by the sounds of conflict, and their eyes widen at the sight. Jaime Lannister with sword in hand, King Aerys' blood dripping from the blade, and the king's body sprawled on the floor. The dragon skulls that line the throne room seem to stare blankly at the scene, as if bearing silent witness to the end of the Targaryen dynasty's maddest king. Outside, Lord Tywin Lannister's timing proves impeccable. Under a peace banner, he had requested entry into the city to keep order. Seeing the gates closed, and hearing no immediate answer, Tywin began to prepare for forcible entry, but before his battering rams can strike, the gates open from within. To the astonishment of all, King's Landing yields without a fight. The Goldcloaks, who only hours ago were uncertain whether to defend the city or not, have heard of Rhaegar's victory, and see the Lannisters not as enemies but as deliverance from the chaos. Many of the city guards are also secretly in Tywin's pay through Pycelle's machinations. So the massive gates groan open, and Lord Tywin Lannister's forces march in unopposed. They come not as liberators sacking a hostile city, but as an auxiliary to maintain order in the wake of battle at least. That's the pretense Tywin intends to keep until Rhaegar arrives. Tywin himself, clad in resplendent armor with the red cloak of Lannister command, strides through the gates flanked by his bannerman. He wears a mask of grim solemnity, but inside, he is calculating. He knows Aerys will distrust him, but with Rhaegar victorious, Tywin must swiftly secure his family's place in the new order. No overt sack, he has ordered his troops, win the city's favor, and be ready to secure the Red Keep. Lannister men swiftly spread through the streets, putting down any remaining chaos from earlier riots and guarding against looting. Their discipline and overwhelming numbers keeps King's Landing eerily calm for an army at the gates scenario. As dusk falls, Lord Tywin arrives at the Red Keep with a retinue of armored knights. They are met by the sight of Sir Jaime Lannister seated on the Iron Throne, alone in the vast throne room, except for the dead king at his feet. Jaime sits sprawled on the spiky metal seat, his white Kingsguard cloak stained red, his sword still naked in one hand. For a moment, father and son regard each other across the hall. Tywin's emerald eyes flick from the corpse of Aerys to the blood on Jaime's blade and cloak. He understands instantly what transpired. The faintest curl of a smile touches the corner of Tywin's mouth. He is not a man given to emotional displays, but Jaime can see a glint of approval and perhaps amusement in his father's hard gaze. "Father," Jaime says, his voice echoing in the silence. He rises from the throne, suddenly aware of how it might look that he had sat there. In truth, Jaime had sunk onto the Iron Throne in exhaustion after ordering the remaining wildfire caches to be secured. He hadn't anticipated Tywin arriving so promptly. "The king is dead," Jaime announces, somewhat unnecessarily, as Tywin steps over Aerys' body without a glimmer of regret. "So it would seem," Tywin replies coolly. He stops before the throne's dais and takes in the room the spilled wildfire, Rossart's corpse, Queen Rhaella standing to the side with handmaids, Grand Maester Pycelle lingering near a column. Tywin's keen mind pieces the puzzle together. His son, Kingsguard and Oathbound, has slain the king. It's a scandalous deed, one that will forever tarnish Jaime's honor in the eyes of many. But Tywin Lannister sees only opportunity. With Aerys gone, Rhaegar will soon ascend the throne unchallenged, and Tywin's own son is the savior of the city, who prevented the Mad King from destroying everything. This gives House Lannister enormous leverage with Rhaegar if handled properly. For now, Tywin shows little emotion. "Well done, Jaime," he finally says, placing a gloved hand briefly on Jaime's shoulder. That simple phrase and gesture from Lord Tywin, notoriously miserly with praise, speaks volumes. Jaime feels a complicated mix of pride and guilt swirl in his gut. He saved the city, yes, but in doing so broke his sacred oath. The weight of Kingslayer is already pressing on him, though the name has yet to be spoken aloud. Any further reunion is cut short by Queen Rhaella's soft voice. "Lord Tywin," she addresses him, drawing his attention. The queen stands regally, despite her shaken state. "I thank you for coming to the aid of the Iron Throne." Her eyes flit to Jaime and the corpse on the floor. Rhaella Targaryen has endured much in her life, the tragedies of her family, the cruelties of her husband, and in this moment, though sorrow lines her face, she exudes a quiet strength. "Ser Jaime has saved us all," she says, each word measured. It's not lost on anyone that the queen is framing Jaime's act as heroic, perhaps preemptively absolving him in the narrative to come. Jaime gives a subtle bow of gratitude to the queen. Tywin nods in agreement, ever the politician. The young lion did what had to be done, he says briskly. "Now, your grace, let us ensure the city is secure for Prince Rhaegar's return." He avoids calling Rhaella your grace, in a way that implies he already considers Rhaegar the true authority. Tywin dispatches his knights to take command of the Red Keep's entrances, and to double the guard on the royal family's quarters. Queen Rhaella and her ladies are escorted to safety. Pycelle scurries after them, babbling about sending word to Dragonstone, for Princess Elia and Prince Viserys perhaps, before Tywin pointedly orders him to arrange food and rest for the Lannister forces quartering in the city. Within the hour, bonfires and torches illuminate King's Landing streets as night falls. There is no sack Tywin's discipline holds. Instead, Lannister banners soon hang alongside the royal dragon banners on the city gates, a public sign that House Lannister now safeguards the capital. Common folk peer from their windows at columns of lions patrolling the streets, unsure whether to fear or welcome them. Rumors race from tavern to tavern. Prince Rhaegar won the battle. The Dragon Prince lives. And the Kingslayer, did you hear? The Kingsguard Jaime Lannister slew King Aerys to stop him from burning us all. Fear, admiration, and uncertainty swirl in every telling of that tale. 2 days later, the victorious Prince Rhaegar arrives at King's Landing with the remnants of his army. Word of Aerys' death has reached him en route. Riding beneath the raised portcullis, Rhaegar enters the city to find it largely intact and under control. The small folk line the streets. Curiously quiet, they are uncertain whether to cheer the son of the Mad King or curse him. Rhaegar wears his battered black armor, still missing several rubies. He has not yet taken any royal trappings for himself. As he passes through Flea Bottom and the market squares, he observes the wary, gaunt faces of the people. They have been living on edge for weeks, fearing siege or fire or worse. Rhaegar's expression beneath his helm is somber. He vowed to be a better ruler than his father, now that burden lies squarely on his shoulders. At the Red Keep's gate, Lord Tywin Lannister awaits in immaculate armor, flanked by his son Tyrion, the younger dwarf son, who stands in Tywin's shadow, and a cadre of Lannister. "Your regards." Tywin kneels as Rhaegar dismounts. "Your Grace," Tywin says formally, voice echoing in the courtyard. Behind Rhaegar stream his banners and knights, Crownlanders, Reachmen, and others who survived the Trident. They eye the Lannisters warily, remembering that Tywin's late arrival in the war was suspect. Rhaegar bids Tywin rise. The prince's violet eyes flick about, assessing. He sees Lannister crimson cloaks on every wall, hears the clink of their armor. It's clear Tywin has effectively taken temporary control of the city. Rhaegar knows Tywin is as shrewd as they come. Whatever his motives, he must be handled carefully. "Lord Tywin," Rhaegar says, voice courteous but cool, "you came at a crucial hour. The realm thanks you for aiding the King's Landing garrison and preserving order." Tywin bows his head slightly. "I serve the realm and its true king, as I always have," he replies smoothly. It's an answer calculated to flatter Rhaegar and distance himself from Aerys' madness simultaneously. No love is lost between Rhaegar and Tywin. Rhaegar recalls the tales of how his father humiliated Tywin's family in court, and he knows Tywin offered his daughter Cersei to him once as a bride, an offer Aerys spurned. But those matters must be set aside. The war might be won, but Rhaegar has a kingdom to stabilize, and Tywin Lannister commands one of the mightiest armies in Westeros. For now, Rhaegar forces a gracious smile and clasps Tywin's forearm. arm. Together, we shall restore peace, he says. Tywin's green eyes glint with satisfaction. He knows a seat at the table of power is assured for him now. Your Grace, King's Landing is yours, he declares. I have kept it safe, awaiting your return. A subtle emphasis on safe, an oblique reference to Jaime's deed. Rhaegar nods curtly and strides past into the Red Keep proper. In the throne room, Rhaegar pauses at the sight of the scorched floor and lingering smell of burnt ozone from wildfire. Word of what happened has reached him. His father slain by Jaime Lannister, the wildfire plot narrowly averted. Rhaegar's jaw tightens as he approaches the Iron Throne. The ashes of the Mad King's funeral pyre, a hasty one arranged by Pycelle, have been cleaned up, but Rhaegar can almost sense the lingering madness in the air. At the foot of the Iron Throne, Ser Jaime stands in his white armor, freshly polished, sword at his side, awaiting the prince's judgment. All courtiers present fall silent, watching intently. Jaime's face is outwardly nonchalant, but a muscle in his cheek twitches as Rhaegar stops before him. Jaime goes to one knee. Your Grace, he says, formally bowing his head. Rhaegar regards the young knight. The faintest traces of dried blood remain in the gilded grooves of Jaime's armor. This Kingsguard saved countless lives by killing the King Rhaegar's own father. It's a deed simultaneously heroic and treasonous. How Rhaegar handles it will set the tone for his reign. The tension in the hall is thick. Even Lord Tywin, now off to the side, watches carefully through narrowed eyes. Ser Jaime, Rhaegar begins quietly. His voice echoes slightly in the vast chamber. They are calling you Kingslayer in the streets. A murmur travels through the assembled lords and ladies at that blunt name, but Rhaegar raises a hand for silence. Jaime keeps his head bowed, hiding any flicker of hurt pride at hearing the moniker. Rhaegar continues, voice stronger. What you did, by oath, was wrong. The Kingsguard are sworn to defend their king to the last. Jaime's neck tenses. He expects condemnation, or even death. He knows full well the gravity of his sin in the eyes of chivalry. But Rhaegar's tone shifts as he addresses not just Jaime, but the entire hall. Yet what you did, by conscience, was right. You saved tens of thousands of innocent lives from wildfire and madness. There is a collective intake of breath. Jaime looks up in surprise, meeting Rhaegar's eyes. The prince no. The new king gazes at him with a solemn, grateful respect. Ser Jaime, Rhaegar proclaims, you are forgiven your oath-breaking, for you have upheld the true spirit of your vows by protecting the realm. With those words, Rhaegar publicly absolves Jaime Lannister of wrongdoing. A ripple of relieved applause comes from some corners of the room, not least from Pycelle, eager to please both Rhaegar and Tywin. Jaime himself lets out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. He bows his head once more. Thank you, your grace, he says, and the tension in his shoulders eases. Though many in Westeros will still spit the name Kingslayer with disdain, King Rhaegar's official stance is clear. Jaime did a noble thing. It is a pragmatic move by Rhaegar honoring Jaime, and by extension, appeasing Tywin Lannister, but also genuinely reflective of Rhaegar's own judgment. He knows his father gave Jaime no choice. With that settled, Rhaegar turns and ascends the Iron Throne. The hall goes silent as the prince stands before the grand seat of Aegon the Conqueror. This is the moment the realm has awaited through the war's long, dark days, the rightful heir taking his place. Rhaegar's heart beats a thunder in his chest as he seats himself on the cold iron. The spikes and twisted swords press against his back uncomfortably. For better or worse, the Iron Throne is his now. A herald steps forward and, in a clear voice, announces, All hail Rhaegar of House Targaryen, second of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm. The titles boom out across the throne room. One by one, those present kneel before King Rhaegar, Sir. Lord Tywin kneels with head inclined, a picture of calculated fealty. The assembled lords from Crownlands and Reach, who fought for Rhaegar, kneel gladly. Even those who rebelled, Jon Arryn, Hoster Tully, and Eddard Stark, freshly arrived under guard, now bend the knee in reluctant acknowledgement of this new reality. Ned Stark's face is stone as he lowers himself, swearing begrudging allegiance to the son of the man who killed his father and brother. Rhaegar meets Ned's eyes across the hall and offers a slight nod. He knows Ned's hatred runs deep, but he also remembers the surrender at the Trident. Ned chose to save his people over pointless death. There is honor there, a grim kind of honor Rhaegar hopes he can work with. King Rhaegar the First, victor of the Trident, is now king of the Seven Kingdoms. Yet, as he looks out over the kneeling court, he feels the full weight of the crown settling on his soul. His dream of a better world must now confront hard reality. He has won a throne, but lost much. The father he could not save from madness, the dear friends and comrades fallen in battle, and though only he knows this, the love of his life, Lyanna Stark, still far away and in peril from childbirth. For a moment, Rhaegar allows himself to grieve privately, even as he holds his royal composure. Then he raises his voice in a steady command. "Rise, my lords." They rise. The great hall relaxes slightly from ceremony. Rhaegar wastes no time, and immediately begins issuing edicts to secure the fragile peace. "As your king," he declares, "I extend amnesty to all lords who once rose against the crown, provided they now swear fealty and keep the king's peace." A murmur sweeps through the hall. It is a merciful stance, likely to prevent further bloodshed. Many rebel lords exchange cautious looks of relief. Jon Arryn bows and declares the Vale's loyalty anew. Hoster Tully, nursing an arm wound, voices support on behalf of the Riverlands. When Rhaegar's gaze falls on Ned Stark, Ned steps forward stiffly. The tall, dark-haired Lord of Winterfell draws a breath. In a somber tone, he pronounces, "The North bends the knee." House Stark will honor its oaths to King Rhaegar. Each word tastes bitter on his tongue, but Ned says them clearly. He would not break his sworn word, no matter his personal feelings. Rhaegar inclines his head in acknowledgement. The realm's major players have publicly submitted. Peace, or something like it, is at hand, but pardons alone are not enough. King Rhaegar knows the value of hostages and alliances to bind wounds. That afternoon, behind closed doors in the small council chamber, he convenes a meeting with the most powerful lords and advisors. Tywin Lannister, unsurprisingly, sits at the table's right hand, effectively reinstated as Hand of the King for his role in stabilizing the city and providing the largest army. Prince Lewin Martell would have represented Dorne, but he perished in battle instead. A raven arrives from Dorne Martell in Sunspear, expressing cautious relief at the war's end and congratulating his brother-in-law. The Reach is represented by Lord Mace Tyrell, who travels up from Storm's End after lifting the siege. The Tyrells remained loyal and expect to be rewarded for their fidelity. At that council, Rhaegar makes strategic decisions to cement his rule. Punishments and clemency are doled out in careful measure are the following. Number 1. Eddard Stark and Jon Arryn, as heads of two great houses that rebelled, are treated with respect but caution. Rhaegar confirms Ned Stark as Warden of the North, a title his father held, in exchange for Ned's binding oath of loyalty. This both placates the proud Northman and keeps Ned responsible for his vast, potentially troublesome region. However, to ensure Ned's loyalty, Rhaegar requests that the Starks send a ward to King's Landing. It's decided that Ned's younger brother, Benjen Stark, will serve as a page and squire at court. Benjen, a boy of about 16, agrees somberly, though he had thoughts of joining the Night's Watch. This gives the crown a valued guest from House Stark, essentially a hostage in polite terms, to discourage northern dissent. As for Jon Arryn, the aging lord of the Eyrie, Rhaegar allows him to return to the Vale as Warden of the East after swearing oaths, but Arryn's only heir, the infant Robert Arryn, born of Jon's marriage to Lysa Tully during the war, is to remain in King's Landing as a royal ward. This effectively keeps the Vale loyal. Number 2. The fate of House Baratheon is more complicated. Robert is dead, leaving no legitimate issue. His youngest brother Renly Baratheon is a boy of 8. The middle brother Stannis Baratheon survived the siege of Storm's End, starving but unbowed. Stannis was taken into custody by the Tyrell forces when Storm's End yielded upon hearing of Robert's death and Rhaegar's victory. Now Stannis stands before the council, gaunt and unflinching, refusing to beg for mercy. Some urge the king to execute Stannis as a traitor to set an example. Others suggest mercy might better win the Stormland's loyalty. Rhaegar studies Stannis hard, unyielding eyes, and sees not a rebel craving power, like Robert, but a rigid man of duty and law. For the slaying of his beloved friend Lewin Martell on the Trident, for it was rumored to be Stannis' quarrel that felled Lewin. Rhaegar harbors some anger, yet he senses killing Stannis will only sow lasting bitterness, with the Stormlands a populous region that Rhaegar needs pacified. In a measured tone, King Rhaegar decrees Stannis Baratheon will be spared, but exiled to the far northern frontier. He must take the Black and join the Night's Watch. This punishment strips Stannis of titles and removes him from political contention, while While appearing merciful, Stannis' jaw tightens to him. This is a living death, but he responds curtly, "I shall do my duty," and accepts, knowing at least his young brother Renly will thus inherit their house untainted. Number 3. Renly Baratheon, a child, is to remain Lord of Storm's End. Given Renly's youth, King Rhaegar appoints a loyal warden, Master of Laws Roland Storm, the bastard of Nightsong, or another trustworthy Marcher Lord, to govern the Stormlands as regent until Renly comes of age. Moreover, Renly will be fostered at Highgarden under the watch of the Tyrells, who supported the Targaryens. This serves a dual purpose, keeping Renly under loyal eyes and further binding Stormlands and Reach. The Tyrells are only too happy to host the Boy Lord, seeing an opportunity to ingratiate themselves and perhaps influence the future Lord. Number 4. Several other rebel supporters are dealt with. Those who refused to yield at the Trident and continued guerrilla resistance in the days after are marked for punishment. One example is Lord Jon Connington, Rhaegar's close friend, who had been Hand of the King earlier in the war, but was exiled by Aerys after failing to capture Robert at the Battle of the Bells. During the rebellion's climax, Connington had been in hiding. Upon hearing Rhaegar's victory, he returned and offered his sword to the new king. Rhaegar, remembering Jon Connington's earlier loyalty and blaming Aerys' madness for his exile, pardons Connington fully and even restores him to the council. This raises some eyebrows, especially Tywin's, but Rhaegar trusts Connington's counsel and perhaps hopes to balance Tywin's influence with another loyal friend. Number 5. House Greyjoy, who opportunistically joined the war late by raiding the Reach, is addressed as well. Their rebellion within the rebellion cost lives. Lord Quelyn Greyjoy died in a naval battle during the chaos. Now Balon Greyjoy rules the Iron Islands. Rhaegar dispatches ravens commanding Balon to reaffirm his fealty and deliver hostages as surety. Having just lost his father and tested the reach of the Iron Throne's power, Balon knows to bide his time. He sends his young son Theon Greyjoy to King's Landing as a ward. Rather than entrusting Theon to Ned Stark as happened under Robert's reign, King Rhaegar keeps the boy under his own protection at court, where Theon's upbringing can be closely monitored, and where any potential cruelty will be noticed. Theon is treated relatively well, though always as a hostage prince. The Iron Islands thus submit, though grudgingly, and Rhaegar keeps a weather eye on them, knowing their propensity for rebellion. Number 6. House Lannister receives its due reward. Tywin Lannister is formally named Hand of the King once more, restoring him to the office he had resigned a few years before the war. This signals to all that King Rhaegar values Tywin's administrative genius and the might of Lannister arms. Many courtiers recall that under Tywin's earlier tenure as Hand, the realm enjoyed prosperity and order. With the Targaryen-Lannister relationship mended, stability seems more assured. Additionally, the betrothal between Prince Viserys Targaryen, Rhaegar's younger brother, a boy of about 8, and Lady Cersei Lannister is announced. This surprises some, given the age gap and the fact that Cersei is a grown woman of about 19. But Tywin had proposed it, and Rhaegar agreed to secure Lannister loyalty through a marital alliance. The arrangement is that Cersei will wed Viserys when he comes of age in a few years. In the meantime, Cersei effectively becomes a prominent lady at court, chaperoning Viserys and ingratiating herself with the royal family. The realm notes this tie, the lions and dragons bound by marriage. Some remember Aerys' refusal to marry Rhaegar to Cersei years ago. Now Tywin has gotten what he wanted in a roundabout way. Number 7. The Tyrells also expect reward for their loyalty. Mace Tyrell is confirmed in all his titles and allowed to continue as Warden of the South, having dutifully kept the Reach in the Targaryen column. Rhaegar lavishes praise on Mace's mother, the Queen of Thorns, for her wisdom in guiding House Tyrell's stance. Olenna Tyrell's influence indeed kept Mace from flirting with rebellion. To further cement the crown's alliance with the Reach, talk of a marriage alliance arises here too. Mace Tyrell has an infant daughter, Margaery, and a capable eldest son, Willis. Rhaegar has a daughter of his own, Princess Rhaenys, now 5 years old. While no formal betrothal is made yet, Rhaenys is very young. Rhaegar hints that Rhaenys might one day wed Willis Tyrell or another suitable Tyrell heir. This delights Mace, who imagines his family a hair's breadth from the Iron Throne through such a match. The Martells of Dorne quietly bristle at the idea. Elias' children are of Martell blood too. After all, why bring the Tyrells so close? But Doran Martell is cautious and keeps his counsel. With these political settlements in motion, King Rhaegar turns to a deeply personal matter that weighs on him: the fate of Lyanna Stark. In the euphoria and chaos of victory, almost everyone has forgotten about the Wolf Maid, who was the war's catalyst. But Rhaegar has not forgotten, nor has Ned Stark. As the capital settles under new authority, Rhaegar slips away with a small escort on a secret mission to Dorne. Under the pretext of visiting Sunspear to soothe House Martell, in truth sending Prince Oberyn Martell ahead to deliver the news of Luwin's honorable death and Elias' safety, Rhaegar departs King's Landing in disguise. With him travels a select band of the most trusted: Sir Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning, and Rhaegar's dearest friend; Sir Oswell Went of the Kingsguard, and a quiet, haunted man, Lord Eddard Stark. Ned had demanded to come when he realized where Rhaegar was going. Rhaegar acquiesced, perhaps feeling Ned's claim was just. Both men, so opposed in war, now share a single urgent purpose: reach Lyanna. They ride swiftly to the Red Mountains at the southern border of the Reach and Dorne. Nestled in those barren hills is an ancient round tower, the Tower of Joy. It is here that Rhaegar had hidden Lyanna Stark for the duration of the war, guarded by his most loyal Kingsguard. Now, the prince approaches with trepidation. He remembers the day he left her there, Lyanna crying as he departed to face Robert, Arthur Dayne promising her protection. Months have passed since then, months in which Lyanna's fate has been a mystery to him. As they ascend the winding path toward the tower in the pale dawn light, Rhaegar's heart hammers. Ned Stark rides silently at his side, jaws clenched, eyes fixed on the lonely tower ahead. Ned's thoughts are a storm. He yearns to see his beloved sister, but dreads what he may find. The closer they get, the more palpable Ned's anger becomes. All of this war, all this devastation, for a love affair and a prophecy, Ned's grief for his brother and father, his friend, his people, swirls with his fear for Lyanna. At the tower's base, 3 white-cloaked figures emerge, having spotted the riders. It is the Kingsguard who remained: Sir Gerald Hightower, Lord Commander, stern and grey-haired but unbowed; Sir Arthur Dayne's sister, Lady Ashara Dayne, who has been helping tend to Lyanna. She steps out behind them, having arrived a few weeks prior to aid the childbirth with her lady's skills. Arthur had sent word for his sister's help when Lyanna's time neared, and finally, carrying a bundled object in his arms, is Sir Gerald's sworn brother, Sir Oswell. Went though Oswell rode with Rhaegar, so perhaps it's Arthur Dayne himself at the tower and Oswell with Rhaegar. Let's adjust. Actually, at the tower originally were Gerald, Arthur, and Oswell in canon. We brought Arthur with Rhaegar, but logically Arthur would have stayed if we were doing no fight scenario. So likely Rhaegar did not bring Arthur in. That case he would have had Arthur remain until he returned. Actually yes, Rhaegar would have left Arthur and the others at the tower when he left for war. So, on this journey back, Sir Arthur Dayne did not ride from King's Landing. He was already at the tower, so correct that. On approaching, Rhaegar is greeted by Arthur Dayne, emerging from the tower, still clad in his pale armor and white cloak, fatigue and worry etched on his noble face. Beside him are Lord Commander Gerald Hightower and Sir Oswell Went, the 3 Kingsguard who had held this vigil all war long. Arthur's expression, normally so controlled, breaks into palpable relief at seeing Rhaegar alive and victorious. He kneels briefly. "Your Grace," he says, then his eyes flick to the Northman beside Rhaegar. "Lord Eddard." Arthur's voice is respectful and wary. They all know Ned came as Lyanna's brother, not as an enemy now. Rhaegar dismounts hurriedly. Arthur, Lyanna, is she? He cannot finish the question. Ned is off his horse as well, dread tightening like a vice around his heart. A sorrow passes over Arthur Dayne's face. "We have guarded her day and night, Your Grace," he says softly. He steps aside, gesturing toward the tower's entrance. "Come, there is someone you both must meet." Inside the cool confines of the Tower of Joy, the air smells of dust, candle wax, and the faint coppery tang of blood. On an upper floor, in a modest chamber, lies Lyanna Stark. She is pale as the morning, exhausted, and soaked with sweat, but alive barely. When Rhaegar and Ned reach her bedside, they find her looking small and frail beneath a pile of furs. Lyanna's long brown hair is plastered to her forehead, her breaths coming shallow and quick. Lady Ashara Dayne stands by the bed, having done all she could as midwife, and nestled in Lyanna's weak arms is a newborn babe, wrapped tightly in a soft blanket. Ned's breath catches. "Lyanna," he whispers, rushing to kneel at his sister's side. At the sound, Lyanna's eyes flutter open. The fever in them recedes just for a moment, as she recognizes her brother. "Ned," she manages, voice barely audible. "I am here," Ned says, tears brimming though he holds them back. He gently takes her free hand in his, clutching it as if to anchor her to life. "I am here. I've come for you." Rhaegar hangs back a step, anguish in his eyes as he beholds Lyanna, this young woman spirited, brave Lyanna now reduced to such fragility because of him. A knot of guilt and love closes his throat. He wants to speak her name, but cannot at first. Lyanna's gaze drifts from Ned to the tall figure behind him. Rhaegar, she breathes. Perhaps she feared she'd never see him again. A ghost of a smile touches her cracked lips. "You came." In 2 strides, Rhaegar is by the bedside opposite Ned. He sinks to his knees, reaching out to cup Lyanna's cheek with a trembling hand. "Lyanna, my love," he whispers, voice thick. "I'm here. We won, and I've come back for you." Tears glisten unshed in the proud prince's eyes. For a fleeting moment, Lyanna's face lights with relief and joy. At those words, the realm is secure. Rhaegar lives, but a wet cough racks her, and the light dims as pain courses through her frail body. Ned and Rhaegar exchange alarmed looks. Lady Ashara leans in to wipe Lyanna's brow. The truth neither man wants to admit hangs heavy. Lyanna is dying, weakened by childbirth fever. With trembling effort, Lyanna draws the small bundle in her arms closer. The baby fusses softly, as if sensing the tension. "I held him," Lyanna whispers. "I held our son." "Rhaegar, I waited for you." A tear slips down her cheek. Her fever-bright eyes turn to Ned. "Ned, his name is." She falters, breath shallow. Ned squeezes her hand, urging her to continue. Rhaegar gently takes the infant from Lyanna's arms to relieve her. The baby boy is so small, with a tuft of dark hair and curious gray eyes, blinking up at the sudden motion. Rhaegar cradles his son for the first time, awe and sorrow flooding him equal measure. This is the child of prophecy he had risked everything for, and also just a precious innocent who might lose his mother any moment. Lyanna's lips move, forming a name she had chosen. "His name is Jaehaerys," she manages, barely audible. She uses a Targaryen name in her hope that one day he'll be acknowledged, but perhaps she also knows he might not be. This part can vary. Alternatively, she might whisper Aegon, but Rhaegar already named his second child Aegon. In our scenario, maybe not. Actually, he did. Rhaegar and Elias' infant son is Aegon, so likely she wouldn't name him Aegon to avoid confusion. Maybe she thought of Jaehaerys, or even Visenya if a girl. Let's stick to one. Call him Jaehaerys for now. Ned leans close, struggling to catch her faint words. She switches to the language of their childhood in Winterfell, perhaps so Rhaegar won't fully understand. "Please, Ned," Lyanna gasps, clutching at his hand with surprising strength. "Promise me." Her dilated blue-gray eyes bore into her brother's, full of fear and hope. "Promise me you'll protect him. Protect my son." Tears finally spill free down Ned Stark's face. He nods vehemently, squeezing Lyanna's hand. "I promise," he chokes out. "On my honor, Lyanna, I will. I'll keep him safe. I swear it." Lyanna's taut expression softens with relief. She struggles to speak again, voice cracking. "They mustn't know Robert's friends if they knew they'd kill him." "Promise me, Ned. I promise," Ned repeats, pressing her hand to his cheek. He knows exactly what she means. Though Robert Baratheon is dead, many in the realm would see a child of Rhaegar and Lyanna half Targaryen, half Stark, as a threat or abomination. Robert's vengeful ghost lives on in his allies and foster family. If word got out, even now in peacetime, it could spur fresh conflict or the child's murder. Ned will carry this secret come what may. Lyanna, comforted by Ned's oath, now turns her fading gaze to Rhaegar, who kneels beside Ned with the baby in his arms. She musters a weak smile for them. "Our son," she whispers. "He is the song of ice and fire. Take care of him, both of you." Rhaegar bows his head, tears slipping from his eyes onto the blanket bundling his son. He places a gentle kiss on Lyanna's brow. "I will, Lyanna, I will." His voice breaks. The prophecy, the visions that haunted him in this fragile new life he cradles, he believes the promise of a savior lies, but it has cost him the woman he loved. Lyanna's breathing grows labored. Ned strokes her hair. "Rest, Lyanna. Rest. You're safe now," he soothes, though his voice trembles. A faint contentment settles on Lyanna's features. She has held her child and secured his safety with Ned's promise. With a final shuddering breath, Lyanna Stark closes her eyes. A tear slips down from beneath her dark lashes, disappearing into her hair. The room seems to hold its breath, then Lyanna's hand goes slack in Ned's grasp. A keening sound escapes Ned's throat. "No, no, please, no," he whispers, pressing Lyanna's now lifeless hand to his forehead. The weight of all his losses crashes onto him anew as he realizes his little sister is gone. Rhaegar bows over the baby, shoulders shaking with silent sobs, grief and guilt intermingled. The Tower of Joy has become a tomb for Lyanna Stark. As morning light filters in, the two men who loved her most mourn together in a rare moment of unity. Outside, Arthur Dayne and the others lower their heads in respect, giving the family privacy in the final goodbye. After some time, Ned gently releases Lyanna's hand and moves to cover her body with a cloak, the very same fine blue cloak Rhaegar once draped over her shoulders at Harrenhal, kept here as a keepsake. Ned's face is etched in anguish, but already his mind turns to the promise he made. He looks to Rhaegar, who holds the infant Prince Lyanna's son close to his chest. King Rhaegar meets Ned's gaze. There is an unspoken understanding. The secret of this child must be preserved, for the boy's safety and for the sake of the fragile peace. His name, Rhaegar murmurs softly, will be Aegon. He is the third head of the dragon. He says it so quietly, as if only half aware. Perhaps in Rhaegar's mind, this baby fulfills the prophecy of the prince that was promised, or completes the 3 children he believed he needed. However, using the name Aegon openly is impossible, with Elias' son Aegon alive, so he quickly rethinks. Rhaegar closes his eyes, composing himself. He looks to Ned. "You heard Lyanna, she called him Jaehaerys. But in the north, you will have to name him something else, something ordinary." Ned nods. He already knows what he must do. "He'll be Jon," Ned says quietly, the name of their foster father, Jon Arryn, who raised Ned like a son, and a simple, unremarkable name for a bastard boy in the north. If Ned returns home with a baby named Jaehaerys, it would raise questions. Jon is safer. Rhaegar gives a faint, approving nod. Sir Arthur Dayne steps in then. Having come to pay his final respects to Lyanna, he places a hand on Rhaegar's shoulder. "My friend," Arthur says gently, "I will see that she is buried honorably, perhaps returned to her family crypt in Winterfell, if Lord Eddard agrees." Ned, wiping his eyes, stands. "Yes, I would take her home," he says hoarsely. "She'll rest beside father and Brandon, in the crypts beneath Winterfell. It is agreed. For now, Lyanna's body will be preserved as best they can for transport." Arthur promises to handle the details, and Ned silently thanks him. Now comes the delicate matter of the baby's future. Rhaegar looks down at his son, a boy with Stark features, already bearing a stark reminder, no pun intended, of Lyanna in his little face. Love and worry war within the king. In a just world, he would raise this child in the Red Keep alongside his other children, acknowledging him as a true-born prince. If he had the will to announce he wed Lyanna, whether he did or not, some tales may vary, but reality intrudes. Aelia Martell, his dutiful wife, has already endured so much, publicly revealing that Rhaegar had a child with Lyanna, either bastard or potentially trueborn. If a secret annulment and marriage happened, would incense Dorne beyond measure and risk shattering the alliance that keeps the realm together. Not to mention many lords might question the succession, fearing disputes between Elias' son Aegon and Lyanna's son. Rhaegar gently passes the baby to Ned. "Lord Stark," he says quietly, voice thick with emotion, "you are his uncle, his blood, and you gave Lyanna your word." Ned takes the child, cradling him awkwardly but securely. The infant Jon, as he will be known, fusses a little, then settles against Ned's warm fur cloak. Rhaegar swallows hard, then continues, I cannot acknowledge him. Not now." The words cost him greatly. Ned sees the conflict in the king's eyes. Duty versus desire. Too many would seek to harm him. For the sake of the realm, and for his own life, he cannot be known as my son. Ned nods, though his jaw clenches. Part of him rages at the unfairness this boy, of his sister's blood, rightful in his own way, condemned to obscurity to appease the pride of great lords. But Ned also comprehends the dangerous politics. "I will take him as my own," Ned says firmly. "No one will ever know his true parentage. I'll raise him at Winterfell, as my bastard son, and I'll guard him with my life, as if he were my own blood, for he is." The relief in Rhaegar is visible. "Thank you," he whispers. He reaches out and brushes a gentle finger across baby Jon's cheek in farewell. The infant prince yawns, unaware of the heavy destiny and secrecy settling upon his tiny shoulders. "Thank you, Ned Stark, for everything. I know what I ask of you is an enormous burden." Ned meets Rhaegar's gaze steadily. "I swore it," he replies simply, almost coldly. He will keep the vow for Lyanna's sake, and the child's, not for Rhaegar. Ned still harbors anger. It was Rhaegar's doing that put Lyanna and this boy in peril to begin with, but in this moment, grief binds them more than anger divides them. It is agreed that Ned will depart for the north immediately with the baby, and Lyanna's remains. To satisfy any curious eyes on the journey, a tale is concocted. Ned Stark has taken in a bastard child during his travels south. Perhaps the mother was a serving girl who died in childbirth along the way. Ashara Dane's name is left carefully unspoken, but in time, rumor will fill that blank with her anyway. Rhaegar will not accompany Ned back. The king must return to King's Landing to his own duties, and to quell any questions of his absence. Instead, Arthur Dayne volunteers to quietly escort Ned as far as the Neck, to ensure the precious bundle is safe until the north. Arthur, who loves Rhaegar like a brother and had sworn to protect Lyanna, now transfers that duty to Lyanna's child. Before they part, Rhaegar places a hand on Ned's shoulder. There is so much he wants to say, apologies that would never be enough, gratitude that can be expressed. In the end, he simply says, "Winterfell has a loyal friend in me, Lord Stark, always." Ned, holding baby Jon, gives a stiff nod. Loyal friend or not, things can never be truly cordial between them, but they share a purpose now. Ned Stark departs the Tower of Joy with sorrow and resolve in his heart. In his arms, baby Jon Snow, as the world will know him, sleeps soundly. In his baggage, carefully wrapped, lies Lyanna's body to be brought home. Sir Arthur Dayne rides at Ned's side part of the way. At the fords of the Trident, where the war's tide turned, Arthur and Ned finally part with mutual respect. Dayne returns south, and Ned rides north toward the Moat Cailin and beyond. When Ned finally reaches Winterfell weeks later, the Stark snows are just beginning to dust the ground. Lady Catelyn Stark, newlywed and recovered from childbirth, she bore Ned's heir Robb Stark during Ned's absence, is shocked when her husband returns not only with his sister's bones, but also with an infant boy in tow. Ned, tight-lipped and haunted by grief, offers little explanation beyond that the boy is his bastard from the war. It is a claim that cuts Catelyn to the core, her honorable husband with a base-born child, but one look at Ned's haggard eyes stilling any further questions. In the crypts of Winterfell, Ned places Lyanna to rest beside their father and brother, fulfilling his duty to the dead, and for the living, he names the dark-haired babe Jon, after Jon Arryn. Many a northern lord is perplexed at how and when Ned could have fathered this child, but none dare question him to his face. Catelyn, wounded in pride, accepts young Jon's presence reluctantly, but can barely bring herself to look at the boy, who stands as proof, in her mind, of Ned's infidelity. Thus, Jon Snow grows up at Winterfell loved by his foster father Ned, but ever an outsider to his foster mother and sisters. A harsh start, shaped by secrets he cannot guess. Back in the Red Keep, King Rhaegar returns with unspeakable grief, suppressed behind his regal mask. To the court and common people, it appears the prince simply went to Dorne to thank the Martells and ensure Dorne's loyalty. None suspect he was saying farewell to Lyanna Stark or his own son. Princess Elia Martell greets Rhaegar warmly, but notices a new sorrow in her husband's countenance. She likely attributes it to the toll of war and the death of Aerys. She does not pry, focusing instead on caring for their children, Princess Rhaenys and baby Prince Aegon, who delight at their father's return. Rhaegar holds his true-born son, Aegon, perhaps a bit longer than usual, mindful of the other son he will never openly hold. Inside, he vows that all this sacrifice Lyanna's life, his honor, Ned Stark's peace of mind, will not be in vain. He tells himself that one day, when the time is right, maybe the truth could come out and his hidden son could take his place in the Targaryen line of succession. But that day is far in the future, and many trials stand before it. For now, Jon Snow is lost to the world as a lowly bastard in the north, and King Rhaegar resumes the task of ruling a wounded realm. The years that follow come to be known as the Dragon's Peace, but it is a fragile, uneasy peace, at best more a cold war than true harmony. King Rhaegar, rules from the Iron Throne, striving to heal the scars of rebellion even as resentments smolder beneath the surface. In the Red Keep, Rhaegar surrounds himself with a mix of loyalists and former rebels in his small council, aiming for balance. Tywin Lannister, as Hand of the King, runs the day-to-day governance with ruthless efficiency. The royal treasury, badly mauled by the costs of war, is soon replenished under Tywin's frugal and methodical oversight, aided, it's whispered, by some loans never repaid to houses that backed the rebellion. Tywin has ways of collecting debts. Jon Connington is invited back from exile to serve as Master of War, organizing the Crown's forces and carefully watching the Marcher Lords for any sign of unrest. Prince Doran Martell eventually sends his youngest brother Oberyn Martell to King's Landing as a diplomatic envoy, and later Master of Whisperers. After Varys withdraws for a time, the Red Viper's sharp eyes and sharper wit prove invaluable in sniffing out those who plot against Targaryen rule. Oberyn's presence also reassures Elia Martell, who remains by Rhaegar's side as queen. Though their marriage was clouded by Rhaegar's actions, they present a united front. Elia is graceful and warm, beloved by the small folk for her generosity, yet those closest to her notice a melancholy that wasn't there before. Perhaps she senses that Rhaegar's heart is not entirely hers, that a ghost of the wolf girl Lyanna stands between them. Still, Elia carries herself with dignity and dedicates herself to raising Prince Aegon and Princess Rhaenys to be worthy future rulers. In public, King Rhaegar projects the image of a just and enlightened ruler. He reinstates the Great Council, something like a periodic assembly of lords, to hear grievances and ensure no region feels ignored. He travels the realm on royal progresses more frequently than Aerys ever did, showing himself to his subjects and dispensing what justice he can. The small folk, for the most part, come to respect this earnest, silver-haired king who plays the harp and listens more than he rants a far cry from the volatile Aerys. They call him the Poet King, as he often sponsors musicians and hosts grand tournaments to restore cheer. Yet, underneath the optimistic veneer, the wounds of war fester. The North remembers. At Winterfell, Lord Eddard Stark keeps an icy peace. He rules dutifully as Warden of the North, ensuring taxes and levies are sent south when required, but Ned's heart is hardened by loss. His interactions with King's Landing are minimal. He politely refuses summons to court as often as possible, citing his duties in the north or the harsh northern winters making travel impractical. When he does correspond, or rarely visit, he is correct but cold to King Rhaegar, though Rhaegar spares no courtesy in treating him with honor, even offering once to name Ned to the small council, which Ned declined. Ned cannot forgive that his sister's life was the price of Rhaegar's throne. The Northern Lords follow Ned's lead. They keep the king's peace, but hold the Targaryens at arm's length. Notably, Lord Howland Reed of the Cranningmen, Ned's companion from the war, is one of the few who knows of Jon Snow's true parentage. He keeps the secret loyally. Howland's already fierce devotion to House Stark intensifies, and he becomes Ned's close confidant, helping to guard Jon's identity. Among the northern smallfolk and highborn alike, some still curse the dragons for the burning of Rickard Stark and Brandon Stark, for the blood spilled at the Trident, and though Robert Baratheon had no legitimate heirs, his memory persists especially among the Baratheon bannermen in the Stormlands. They chafe under the rule of a Targaryen king, especially one who killed Robert. But with Robert's brothers neutralized Stannis at the Wall, Renly a child under Tyrell influence, there's little they can do but grumble into their cups. King Rhaegar, understanding the discontent, takes a calculated step. He fosters better relations with the Riverlands and Vale to encircle the North and Stormlands with loyal regions. The Riverlands, under the aging Lord Hoster Tully and soon his son Edmure, enjoy royal favor. Hoster is named Master of Laws for a time, and a Tully marriage is sought for one of Rhaegar's cousins to bind ties. In the Vale, young Lord Robert Arryn, Jon Arryn's sickly son, grows up as a ward in the Crownlands, under the watch of Stokeworth's or another loyal house, so his vassals remain meek. By the time Robert Arryn comes of age, he idolizes King Rhaegar almost like a second father, and is far more tractable than his stern late father, Jon Arryn. Even so, the climate in King's Landing remains tense in those early years. Whispers circulate in the taverns and pot shops that Aerys' death was far too convenient, that perhaps Tywin, or even Rhaegar himself, ordered Jaime Lannister to kill the king. Some speak of Jaime as Kingslayer with scorn, though quietly the king officially honors him. Jaime endures the epithet with a clenched jaw. At court, he is not ostracized. In fact, Rhaegar keeps Jaime close as one of his Kingsguard, showing trust. Rhaegar even has Jaime protect Queen Elia and the children often, a gesture that both flatters Tywin. Rumors that Jaime is out of favor, but outside the Red Keep, ballads and gossips are less kind. Over time, Jaime grows bitter at hearing Oathbreaker behind his back. He buries his frustrations in training and indulgences in the city's pleasures. Tywin, recognizing that Jaime's position in the Kingsguard might limit his future, quietly tries to influence Rhaegar to release Jaime from his vows so he can be heir to Casterly Rock. Tywin has only Tyrion otherwise, whom he disdains. Rhaegar, however, politely declines releasing the Kingslayer would imply the crown felt what he did was wrong, undermining Rhaegar's own decree, so Jaime remains in white, for better or worse. Meanwhile, Cersei Lannister navigates her new life as a royal betrothed to Prince Viserys. This is hardly the station she once envisioned. She went from dreaming of marrying Rhaegar to being promised to a boy 11 years her junior. Initially, Cersei is bitter and humiliated. However, Tywin counsels patience. He reminds her that Viserys will one day be a grown man, and possibly even King's Hand, or some such if Rhaegar's line continues, and any children she has by Viserys will be of royal blood. Cersei swallows her pride, and plays her role well in public. She charms young Viserys with her beauty and savvy, effectively becoming an early guiding influence on him. By the time Viserys is a teenager and old enough to consummate their marriage, Cersei has subtly molded him, he dotes on her, and often echoes her opinions, which are really Tywin's, funneled through his daughter. Some at court note that Viserys acquires a certain arrogance as he grows, possibly due to Cersei's flattery and his own predisposition. Prince Viserys and Lady Cersei marry when Viserys turns 16, Cersei in her mid-20s by then. The wedding is a lavish affair meant to symbolize the unity of Crown and Westerlands. King Rhaegar's toast speaks of a new era of prosperity and unity. The small folk cheer, and the lords applaud, but behind closed doors many watch this union warily. It essentially places a Lannister a heartbeat away from the Iron Throne. As the years pass, Princess Rhaenys Targaryen blossoms into a lively and bright young woman, and Prince Aegon Targaryen grows into a handsome, if somewhat bookish boy under his father's careful tutelage. Rhaegar is a doting father to his acknowledged children, often seen walking in the gardens with little Aegon's hand in his, or applauding as Rhaenys dances in the court masquerades. The realm, in general, warms to this royal family that seems more approachable than the last Targaryen generation. Having Dornish blood in the children also helps quell Dorne's lingering discontent. Doran Martell knows that his nephews and niece, Aegon and Rhaenys, will carry Martell blood onto the throne one day. In Dorne, however, there is one point of bitterness: the rumored fate of Lyanna Stark. It's known she died around the war's end, but how and why remains cloaked in mystery. Some Dornish, aware that Rhaegar had an infatuation with her, suspect foul play, or at least scandal. Whispered conversations in Sunspear's water gardens sometimes mention that Rhaegar's northern whore got off easy dying, and that if she had lived, Dorne would have demanded her head for what she put Elia through. These are mostly idle threats now that Lyanna is gone, but they show that even with time, the Martells have not forgotten Rhaegar's slight to Elia. Only Rhaegar's continued devotion to Elia and the well-being of their shared children smooths this over. Doran Martell remains cordial with Rhaegar, accepting a position on the small council eventually, but their relationship is correct, and not especially warm. In the Stormlands, the regency of young Lord Renly under the Tyrell's watch proceeds without major incident. Many Stormland lords actually find an unexpected prosperity in these years. King Rhaegar, conscious of their loss of Robert and Stannis, makes efforts to include Stormland lords in tournaments and grants. He even pardons some of Robert's most ardent supporters fully, giving them minor offices to show goodwill. Yet, in their castles, some of those fiery lords drink toasts to the true King Robert in secret and grumble that a dragon sits where a stag should have. One such malcontent is Lord Lionel Baratheon, a black-bearded cousin of Robert's line, who held minor lands. In the 5th year of Rhaegar's reign, Lionel conspires with a few like-minded stormlords to stage a rebellion during a planned royal visit to Summerhall. They hope to seize Rhaegar's person and declare him forfeit in favor of, oddly, Renly Baratheon as a figurehead king, since Renly is Robert's brother, albeit a child. The plot is ill-conceived and leaks out. Before they can raise their banners, Lord Jon Connington leads a swift contingent of loyal Crownlanders and Reachmen to arrest the conspirators. The ringleader Lionel is brought to King's Landing, where King Rhaegar, in open court, has to make a pivotal decision: show mercy or firmness. Many remember how Aerys' cruelty spurred rebellion in the first place. Rhaegar wants to be different, but Tywin and Connington advise that too much leniency will breed contempt. In the end, Rhaegar splits the choice. The principal plotters, Lionel Baratheon and 2 others, are executed for treason, beheaded before the Iron Throne after a brief hearing. Their more youthful or less central co-conspirators are spared but sent to the wall in exile. And notably, no collective punishment is levied on their families or lands their heirs inherit peacefully, on condition of renewed oaths of fealty. This balanced approach sends a message: Rhaegar is just, but not weak. The realm takes note. The minor rebellion is snuffed out with minimal bloodshed, and the Stormlands simmer down, leaderless in any further resistance, with Renly too young and closely guarded. While political intrigues play out, the common folk of Westeros gradually rebuild and move on. Under Rhaegar's reign, the roads are repaired, harvests slowly improve, and the scars of the war begin to heal. People begin to say that King Rhaegar brings a summer of songs, for he often holds open-air courts with music and poetry, patronizing bards to lift spirits across the land. However, not all is well in the smallfolk realm. The war left many orphans and broken men. In the Riverlands, bands of outlaws who initially rose to fight the Mad King's men, or Lannister incursions, never fully went home. Some now turned to banditry. One such group, calling themselves the Brotherhood of Justice, roams near the Trident, robbing tax collectors and targeting those they deem responsible for war crimes, occasionally hanging a landed knight who had profited from the chaos. Rhaegar dispatches knights to deal with them, but they prove elusive, melting into the countryside with local support. In King's Landing, the memory of near destruction by wildfire and siege has made the population fervently loyal to Rhaegar, but also fearful. The eruption of disease in the poorer quarters, the stink fever one year, causes unrest that the local garrison has to quell. Some fanatics claim it's the gods' punishment for letting Targaryens rule again. Rhaegar personally walks among the sick, in the slums distributing food and coin, which does wonders for his image. The fever subsides eventually. Through all these challenges, Rhaegar strives to maintain his principles. He often confides in Grandmaster Aemon. He had the elderly but wise maester recalled from his self-exile at the Wall to advise him an AU twist perhaps. If not, maybe Maester Marwyn or someone progressive is chosen. Rhaegar also spends time in the Red Keep's library and rookery, poring over scrolls of prophecy and histories of Valyria. Those close to him know he remains quietly obsessed with the ancient prophecy of the prince that was promised. He believes the long night will come in his children's lifetime, and that dragons somehow must return to fight it. But with no actual dragons alive, Rhaegar turns to other means. He funds expeditions to the ruins of Valyria and to the Far East in search of knowledge, dragon eggs, anything. This is subtle and not widely publicized. Only a few counselors like Connington and Pycelle are aware. Pycelle scoffs, thinking it folly. Rhaegar's prophetic concerns are vindicated, however, by growing reports from the Night's Watch. Far in the north, the Wall has seen unusual happenings. Wildling tribes massing in numbers unseen in generations. Strange sightings, dead creatures walking, according to some rangers' ravings. Under the leadership of the new Lord Commander, a hard and fearless man by the name of Stannis Baratheon, the Night's Watch sends urgent missives south for aid against the Wildlings, who are united under a king beyond the Wall. Many lords dismiss these tales. Wildling incursions are nothing new, and talk of the others is considered superstition. But Rhaegar, steeped in prophecy, does not so easily write it off. We now find ourselves about 15 years after the end of Robert's rebellion. It is the year 298 AC. King Rhaegar Rhaegar's rule has brought relative stability. Prince Aegon is a handsome boy of 15. Prince Viserys in his early 20s married to Cersei with a toddler son of their own, and Princess Rhaenys, a graceful young lady of 17, just recently wed to Willis Tyrell in a grand royal wedding that further binds Highgarden to the crown. Queen Elia remains a revered figure and advisor to Rhaegar, though her health has declined. Her early pregnancies left her frail. In the north, Robb Stark is a young man of 14, being groomed as Ned's heir. His bastard half-brother Jon Snow is of the same age, a quiet, brooding lad who is the very image of young Ned, or rather, of young Rhaegar, though no one sees that who doesn't know the secret. Jon is skilled with sword, and has a certain nobility about him despite his bastard status. Ned Stark, ever true to his promise, treats Jon with fatherly affection, though a bit reserved, so as not to make it too obvious he favors him. Catelyn Stark remains distant toward Jon, which the boy feels acutely. By this time, Jon dreams of finding a place he belongs. He has often thought of joining his great-uncle Benjen Stark, who, feeling guilt for not fighting in the rebellion, joined the Night's Watch years ago, and is now First Ranger under Lord Commander Stannis. It would be an honorable path for a boy with no inheritance. Ned, sensing Jon's restlessness, and fearing what might happen if Jon stays near when he comes of age, perhaps in conflict with Catelyn or Robb's position, is considering allowing Jon to take the Black when he's a bit older, albeit with a heavy heart. The Wall's pleas can no longer be ignored in 98 AC. Reports come of Mance Rayder, leading 100,000 wildlings toward the Wall. Lord Commander Stannis, as rigid and unyielding as the Wall itself, writes scroll after scroll describing ominous signs. The cold winds are rising, the dead walk. We face the storm of swords, and the dark of night. Most southern lords laugh it off, just wildling raiders and Stannis melodrama. But King Rhaegar listens. How can he not, when these warnings echo the very prophecy that has defined his life's purpose? Rhaegar calls a great council at Harrenhal, an echo of the famous tourney, but for a crisis meeting to persuade the lords to send forces north to aid the Night's Watch. Many attend, out of respect and curiosity. By now, Rhaegar has earned goodwill, so they hear him out. Lord Roose Bolton, a cold-eyed man who succeeded his more ardent rebel father at the Dreadfort, sneers at the idea of southern knights marching north on what he considers a fool's errand. But others, like Lord Edmure Tully, and even Tywin Lannister, who does not believe in others, but sees value in getting rid of restless minor lords by sending them to freeze up north, support giving modest aid. The Grand Maester cites records of the Long Night, but casts doubt on their literal truth. In the end, King Rhaegar decrees that he will ride north himself. With a royal host, he will not command others to face danger, he will not. This shames and inspires many lords. Young knights eager for glory volunteer to join the royal host. Among them, notably, is Jaime Lannister, who sees a chance to escape the whispers of King's Landing and win true honor in battle against supposedly supernatural foes. Though he's skeptical, he'll gladly fight wildlings to prove himself. Lord Renly Baratheon, now of age 18 and recently given leave from Highgarden's fostering, also goes, perhaps seeing a chance to fill his heroic brother's shoes in the eyes of Stormlanders. Ned Stark, upon hearing that Rhaegar will lead men beyond the Wall, decides that the North will honor its duty to guard the realms of men. He calls his banners, perhaps reluctantly, to follow a king he resents, but devoutly to protect his people from the threat only he truly takes seriously. Thus, the final act draws near. King Rhaegar Targaryen marches north with an army of mixed southern and northern troops to confront the gathering darkness beyond the Wall. The Stark direwolf and the Targaryen dragon fly side by side on the windswept plains of the Gift, an alliance once unthinkable, now forged by necessity. Ned Stark rides at the king's flank in silence, while Rhaegar steals glances at Ned's bastard son Jon Snow, now a rangy, solemn teenager serving as one of Ned's squires. Rhaegar cannot help but feel a surge of pride and heartache at the sight of the boy his son riding so well and looking so noble, even in simple woolens. Jon notices the king's attention occasionally and is puzzled by the warmth he thinks he sees there, but he shrugs it off, focusing on the mission. One frigid night, the royal host encamps at Winterfell before the final push to the Wall. King Rhaegar walks the ancient castle's ramparts with Lord Eddard under the aurora shimmer of the northern sky. The two men have rarely spoken at length in years, but the looming peril has stripped things to essentials. Rhaegar thanks Ned for his aid, and Ned quietly replies that he's doing it for the North, for his family, for humanity, not for Rhaegar personally. Rhaegar understands. Their breath mingles in the cold air as they stand above the crypt of Winterfell. Rhaegar asks softly if he might pay respects to Lyanna before they leave on what could be a doomed venture. Ned hesitates, then nods, leading the king down into the darkness. In the crypts, Rhaegar Targaryen stands before the carved stone likeness of Lyanna Stark, a stone wolf at her feet and iron sword across her lap to keep vengeful spirits at bay. He is struck by sorrow and regret. Ned hangs back, allowing Rhaegar a private moment. The king kneels and places a single blue winter rose, preserved from the glass gardens of Winterfell, on the tomb. In a voice barely above a whisper, he says, "I won my throne, but I lost my love. I hope somehow you know that I will fight for our son, and for the world you wanted him to grow up in." Ned hears only bits of this. His face is stony, but there are tears in his eyes as he gazes at his sister's effigy. Before leaving, Rhaegar turns to Ned. In the dim lantern light, both men's faces are lined with care. "If we do not return," Rhaegar says quietly, "tell Jon. Tell him I'm sorry I never got to know him." Ned stiffens. It's the first time Rhaegar has ever openly acknowledged Ned's bastard as anything more. Ned nods curtly, words failing him. As they ascend, Ned finally breaks the heavy silence. "We will return," he says with grim finality. "We must." In the icy forests beyond the wall, under swirling snow and auroras, the army of the living Northmen, Southron knights, free folk who turned cloak to fight the dead, Night's Watch brothers in black, and highborn lords in shining armor, finds itself face to face with the ancient evil of the others. The long night has begun to creep over the world. In this crucible, all the grudges and rivalries of the past decade fall away. Rhaegar fights side by side with Robert Baratheon's friends and Ned Stark's bannermen, with Jaime Lannister guarding his flank and Lord Stannis, stern and gaunt in black, commanding the Watch's catapults of dragonglass. In pitched battle on the frozen plains, Rhaegar's sword, perhaps even the legendary Lightbringer if he's deemed the prophesied hero in this timeline, blazes with the sun's reflection as he cuts down an icy wight to save Ned Stark's life. Ned in turn looses a weirwood arrow that shatters an other who nearly struck Rhaegar from behind. A mutual respect, hard-earned and wordless, finally grows between them amid the howling winds of winter, and at the edge of the battle, a boy of 14, Jon Snow, stands with the Stark guards, watching the nightmare unfold, but holding his blade with a courage that belies his years. He witnesses King Rhaegar fighting, golden armor shining, and something in Jon stirs a sense of familiarity, of destiny perhaps. Jon does not yet know the blood in his veins, but he finds himself drawn into the fray when white giants break the line. He ends up back to back with Rhaegar at one moment, slashing at ghouls. Rhaegar locks eyes with the boy, and for a split second, time freezes. A father fighting alongside his unacknowledged son to protect the world. In Jon's gray eyes, Rhaegar sees Lyanna's fierce spirit and his own determination. They nod to each other and press on. Ultimately, through great sacrifice, many heroes falling, perhaps Jaime Lannister meets a heroic end, stopping an other from reaching Rhaegar, redeeming his honor at last. Perhaps Stannis Baratheon, never one to shy from duty, perishes holding the gate so survivors can retreat. The living win a dawn of victory. The Night King or Great Other is vanquished, some say by King Rhaegar himself, at the cost of a terrible wound. Others credit a mysterious figure, perhaps even Bran Stark or Mira Reed, but the songs will name Rhaegar. In the aftermath, as the sky cracks with the first pink light of true dawn, King Rhaegar collapses from exhaustion, and the wound he took not mortal, but serious. It is Jon Snow who rushes to his side, helping Ned bear the king to a makeshift litter. Rhaegar looks up at Jon, a thin smile on his blood-crusted lips. "You're a brave boy, Jon," he says softly. Jon flushes with equal parts pride and confusion that the king knows his name. Ned Stark watches this with a mix of awe and a pang in his heart. There is so much he hasn't told Jon, so much he hasn't said to Rhaegar either, but perhaps, after all this, secrets can be laid to rest. In that moment, Ned takes off his own cloak, the white fur cloak of the Warden of the North, and drapes it over the shivering Jon's shoulders as he stands guard by the wounded king. It is a small symbolic gesture, but Jon's eyes widen. Ned gives him a nod that says, "I'm proud of you." Jon stands a little taller. King Rhaegar lives to see the next spring, for the long night has been averted. His silver hair is streaked with white from all he's endured. As the realms celebrate the victory over the dark, Rhaegar returns in triumph to King's Landing. He is hailed as the warrior king, the savior who stood against the night. Yet Rhaegar's heart is humble. He knows it was a union of many dragon and direwolf, lion and rose, eagle and fish, sun and spear, all the houses and common folk of Westeros, that saved them. In the grand feast at King's Landing that follows, he toasts to the unity of the realm of men. There, in the Red Keep's throne room, crowded with celebrating heroes, Rhaegar does something unexpected but just. He calls forth Jon Snow before the assembly. The young lad comes forward nervously, aware of hundreds of eyes, including his astonished families, on him. King Rhaegar recounts how Jon showed courage beyond his years in the battle, how he saved the lives of several knights and even the king. Jon blushes fiercely as people murmur. Then Rhaegar, smiling warmly, pulls out a fine sword. To Ned Stark's shock and slight panic, Rhaegar announces he is legitimizing Jon Snow for his valor, naming him Jon Stark, a true son of Winterfell. Gasps echo. Catelyn Stark's eyes widen. Edmure Tully nearly drops his wine, and Sansa Stark claps in delight while Robb is surprised, but grins at his brother. Ned's mouth opens in shock, but he quickly masks it as all eyes turn to him. This was not expected, and he worries what it implies, but he meets Rhaegar's gaze. The king gives the slightest nod, as if to say it's time. Ned slowly stands, and in front of the hall, embraces Jon. The great lords cheer at this poignant scene, the king rewarding nobility wherever it's found. The Northmen cheer loudest. Jon was always well liked by Winterfell's men. Only a few, like Tywin Lannister and Oberyn Martell, exchange calculating glances. Why would Rhaegar take such interest in a baseborn Stark boy? Some piece the puzzle whispers start, that perhaps Rhaegar knew something of Jon's birth, but these are overshadowed by the general rejoicing. In private that night, Ned visits Rhaegar. There are no others around, save maybe Howland Reed or Arthur Dayne, if he lived, guarding the door. Ned is conflicted and emotional. Quietly, he thanks Rhaegar for honoring Jon, but also demands, why? Why risk revealing more? Rhaegar, weary but at peace, says softly, the realm is safe now because of men like Jon. He deserves his name, and Lyanna would be so proud. Tears glint in Ned's eyes. After a long pause, Ned asks, voice barely audible, will you tell him? Does he need to know who his father truly is? Rhaegar closes his eyes, then shakes his head slowly. Not now. Perhaps not ever openly. He is a Stark, Ned. That is where he belongs with your family, in the north. I would not uproot him. The war is won, the prophecy fulfilled, and he can live free of the burden of being a king's son. Ned silently agrees. Jon's temperament is more Stark, anyway. They clasp forearms in mutual respect truly, finally, and an old curse between their houses is lifted. Thus, the realm enters a new era. The Targaryen dynasty continues, tempered by the lessons learned. King Rhaegar, once a tragic figure in prophecy, now an aging but beloved monarch, presides over years of unprecedented cooperation between the great houses. He establishes a council of lords to regularly consult on the kingdom's concerns, a rudimentary step towards something like a parliament, perhaps an idea gleaned from the camaraderie of war. He even brings wildlings who fought for humanity south of the Wall and grants them lands in the gift, integrating them into the realm, a controversial but visionary move that owes much to Jon Stark's influence. For Jon befriended many free folk and spoke for them. And what of Daenerys Targaryen, the princess who in another timeline hatched dragons across the sea? In this world, Daenerys grows up in the Red Keep as the cherished youngest sister of King Rhaegar. Without exile and hardship, she is a different person, lively, gracious, fluent in common tongue and Valyrian both, and known for her love of dragon lore. As she comes of age, many suitors from Westeros and Essos seek her hand. Rhaegar, mindful of keeping peace, eventually arranges a marriage for Dany that will strengthen the realm, and here he surprises everyone. He chooses Jon Stark, newly knighted and legitimate, as Dany's husband. It's a match that raises some eyebrows, a prince's sister with a northern lord, but politically, it binds House Stark forever to the Targaryen lineage, finally healing the rift that began with Lyanna's abduction in the most poetic way. Jon and Dany, who got to know each other at court after the war, have a shy fondness that quickly blooms into true affection. And fittingly, the blood of ice and fire reunites in them, if one believes in prophecy still. When King Rhaegar eventually dies peacefully in his bed many years later, a wizened man with Elia holding his hand and his children and grandchildren around, the realm weeps. They remember him as Rhaegar the Beloved, a king who united the seven kingdoms against the dark and ruled with wisdom, chivalry, and yes, a touch of tragedy turned hope. Prince Aegon Targaryen succeeds as the new king, guided by his uncle Hand, Jon Stark. For Jon's deeds made him a legend, and his kinship unbeknownst to the world, half-blood with the royal family made him a fitting counselor. Queen Mother Elia and the Martells see their blood on the throne in Aegon, and they are content. House Lannister is bound by Viserys and Cersei's line. Their son is a prominent lord, if not king. The North and South are bound by Jon and Daenerys' line. Their children have both Dragonlord and First Men features. The realm stands more united than it has been since Aegon the Conqueror first forged it in fire and blood. In the crypts of Winterfell, Lyanna Stark's statue stands with a new significance. She, who in one life was only known as the kidnapped Wolfmaid, is now remembered in songs as the Rose of Winterfell, who inspired a prince to change the world. At the annual Princess Lyanna tourney, established by King Rhaegar in her honor, knights and ladies sing of her beauty and bravery. Ned Stark, who lived to see his foster son become one of the greatest men in the realm, often visits her crypt to tell her the news that their son grew to be a true hero, that the realm is at peace, that her laughter lives on in her grandchildren playing in the Godswood, and so, in this timeline, the Trident's waters flowed not with the blood of Rhaegar Targaryen, but with the blood of Robert Baratheon. That single change set in motion a chain of events that led Westeros through great trials and triumphs. The Iron Throne stayed beneath the dragon banner, but it became a symbol of unity rather than tyranny. The ghosts of the past were laid to rest, the promises kept, and the song of ice and fire was finally sung in harmony, not in the clash of war, but in the joining of houses against the true enemy, and in the children born of love and honor. In the end, this is not a tale of victory or defeat, of one house triumphing over another. It's a tale of redemption for a prince who had to learn the cost of prophecy, for a realm that had to suffer and then unite, and for two families, dragon and wolf, that found a way to move beyond tragedy into hope. The War of the Trident gave way to the Peace of the Dragon, and Westeros, scarred but steadfast, endured together into a new dawn.